Freedom. Funny how it felt more like a burden than a gift. After 5 years behind those concrete walls, I thought walking out would taste sweet, but as I stood outside the gates, only the wind greeted me, sharp and bitter. The sky hung low, heavy with thick clouds, like a weight pressing down on me. I inhaled, but the cold did nothing to clear the suffocating sense of loss. 5 years gone, and I wasn't stepping into the life I'd known. All I had was a duffel bag, a few worn-out clothes, and my freedom, if that's what you'd call it. The guard's parting words, "Good luck or stay clean, I'm not sure," didn't even register. My mind was elsewhere. On Amy. Always on Amy. Her name still tasted like ash. Even after everything, I couldn't shake her. Couldn't shake what we had, or rather, what I thought we had. Love? Trust? It had all been a lie. I thought of the first time I saw her. The gallery, the red dress. She had this way of walking into a room and bending it around her. The kind of woman you couldn't ignore. I didn't just fall for her, I plummeted. And it was all a mistake. My friends saw it. My mother saw it. I ignored them all. And for what? A woman who let me take the fall, who left me rotting in a cell while she lived free. I stuffed my hands deep into my coat pockets, heading toward the bus stop, the gnawing emptiness inside me growing. I hadn't decided where I'd go next, but there was one person I couldn't avoid. Eleanor Shaw, Amy's mother. She was the only one who'd written me while I was locked away. Her words were burned into my brain, "Amy's been unfaithful. She was never pregnant. There's more you need to know, Will. Come find me, and I'll tell you everything." But Eleanor hadn't lived long enough to tell me the whole story. The cancer had taken her before she could say it to my face. Her last request was cryptic, something that kept me up at night, replaying over and over, "Dig my grave." Maybe it was a metaphor. Maybe she meant it literally. Standing at the edge of this broken life, I figured there was only one way to find out. The cemetery was quiet, unnervingly so. The crunch of dead leaves underfoot was the only sound as I made my way to Eleanor's grave. Her tombstone was stark and simple, Eleanor Shaw, beloved mother, carved into the smooth marble. Freshly turned soil surrounded the base, almost like she was waiting for me. I gripped the shovel tighter, its cold steel handle biting into my palm. The absurdity of this moment, the digging, the secrecy, wasn't lost on me. But nothing about my life had made sense since that night. This was just one more turn in a never-ending nightmare. I dug into the earth. At first, the dirt moved easily, each scoop bringing me closer to something. When the shovel finally hit something hard, I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. I knelt, brushing away the soil with my hands until a rusted metal box emerged, half buried in the grave. My breath caught. Dig my grave. She'd meant every word. The hinges creaked as I pried the lid open. Inside, a bundle of letters tied with a frayed ribbon and a single note. Addressed to me. My fingers shook as I unfolded the yellowed paper. "Will, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you need to know. Amy's lies go deeper than you think. She didn't just betray you. She betrayed us all. Inside this box are letters, bank records, proof of her deception. Be careful. The truth may hurt more than the lies." I exhaled slowly, my mind spinning. Eleanor had known all along. I thumbed through the papers, letters, wire transfers, secret bank accounts. A life Amy had hidden from me, darker and more treacherous than I could have ever imagined. One letter caught my eye. It wasn't from Amy, it was from Sarah, the woman Amy had hit that night. The woman whose life had become entangled with mine in the worst possible way. Her signature at the bottom felt like a brand on my skin, "Meet me. We need to talk." The cafe was small, tucked away on the edge of town. Sarah sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup, staring out into the gray street. When I approached, she turned, her gaze locking on mine. "Will," she said quietly, motioning to the chair opposite her. "It's been a while." "Too long," I replied, sitting down. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I could still see the pain in her eyes. Pain I'd helped cause. Sarah sighed, placing her cup down with a soft clink. I didn't know if you'd come. I almost didn't, I admitted, glancing at the bundle of letters in my coat pocket. But Eleanor. She led me here. She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. Eleanor was a good woman. She didn't deserve what Amy did to her. None of us did. I pulled out the letters and laid them on the table. You said we needed to talk. So talk. What have you been holding on to all these years? Sarah's eyes flicked toward the letters before meeting mine. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, finally, she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. That night, the accident. It wasn't just bad luck, Will. Amy was trying to silence me. Silence you? My throat tightened. Why? What could you have possibly known that was worth that risk? I was investigating her, Sarah said, her eyes clouding with sorrow. She was laundering money. Big sums. I was getting too close, and she knew it. The accident wasn't an accident. The ground beneath me felt like it was slipping. Amy, the woman I had loved, wasn't just unfaithful. She was a criminal. And I had taken the fall for her. I don't know what to say. Sarah looked at me, her gaze softening. You don't have to say anything. But you do have a choice. You can walk away now, forget all of this. Or we can take her down, together. I stared at her, the weight of the decision pressing on me. But I already knew the answer. The truth was too heavy to walk away from now. I'm in, I said quietly. We're taking her down. Sarah nodded, a fierce glint in her eyes. Good. Because this time, we're going to make sure Amy pays for everything. As we sat there, the quiet hum of the cafe around us, I realized something. This was just the beginning. The beginning of the end. The days following our discovery felt like a relentless storm, each moment a battleground between anticipation and dread. Amy's deceit was no longer a distant echo, it was a roaring, monstrous truth that I struggled to grasp. She had been more than just unfaithful, she was a puppeteer in a dark, dangerous game. I sat alone in my sparse apartment, the papers spread out before me like a damning map of her treachery. Evidence of offshore accounts, financial maneuvers, and a roster of names lay exposed, but the documents revealed more than just money laundering. Sarah had unearthed something far more chilling, an intricate web of trafficking that twisted through Amy's life. My phone buzzed, shattering my focus. The screen displayed Sarah's name, her urgency palpable even through the digital barrier. Will, her voice crackled with tension. I found something. You need to come over, now. Her townhouse on the city's edge was a stark contrast to the cold, unyielding prison walls I had left behind. As I stepped inside, the warmth of the space did little to ease the chill creeping up my spine. Sarah's face was ashen, her eyes wide with an intensity that mirrored my own apprehension. Come in, she urged, her voice low and hurried. On her coffee table, a stack of files and a laptop stood as grim witnesses to our efforts. I took a seat, my heart racing with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Sarah wasted no time. I've been digging deeper, she began, her voice strained with controlled fear. And what I found? It's worse than we thought. What did you find? I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. She hesitated, her hands trembling as she opened a file. Amy's involvement goes beyond money laundering. There's evidence linking her to human trafficking. The word hit me like a physical blow. Trafficking. My stomach churned. Amy had been reckless, yes, but this? This was an abyss of corruption I hadn't imagined. Sarah laid out the documents, emails, wire transfers, cryptic messages. Each piece was a chilling confirmation of Amy's depravity. This is unbelievable, I whispered. Amy was reckless, but this is pure evil. Sarah's expression was grim. If we don't act swiftly, she'll slip away. These people she's involved with, they don't leave loose ends. We need to expose everything before it's too late. How could I have been so blind? My voice cracked. I loved her. I sacrificed everything. You weren't blind, Will, Sarah said gently, reaching out to touch my hand. You were manipulated. Amy knew how to exploit your trust because she saw your goodness. But she's a predator. She needs to be stopped. I withdrew my hand, pacing the room as I grappled with the horrifying reality. Every memory of Amy was now tainted by her true nature. Sarah's voice cut through my turmoil. We can bring her down, but we need to be smart. We can't go to the police yet. Then what do we do? I demanded, frustration boiling over. Sarah's eyes were resolute. We need leverage. Amy's protected, but if we find something that exposes her vulnerability, we'll have the upper hand. My mind raced. How do we find that? Sarah opened another file, revealing a list of high-profile names, politicians, businessmen, all connected to Amy's illicit dealings. This is our starting point, she said, tapping the list. If we can tie one of these people to Amy's operation, we'll have a powerful tool. The first name stood out, Patrick Hale, a businessman with close ties to Amy. He owned several companies and a nightclub where Amy and I had spent countless nights. Back then, Hale's charm and free drinks seemed harmless, but now he was a key player in Amy's treacherous game. We dived into our investigation, poring over public records, financial statements, and news reports. Despite their efforts to cover their tracks, we found a crucial link: wire transfers from Hale's shell company to an offshore account tied to Amy. This is it, Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. This is the proof we need. Staring at the damning evidence, a cold dread settled in my chest. This was no longer just about Amy, it was a network of powerful men entrenched in a grotesque conspiracy. We need to go to the authorities, I said, my voice firm despite the turmoil within me. They can't ignore this. Sarah's expression remained tight. We need to be cautious. Going to the police too soon could tip off Amy. She might vanish before they even act. My frustration erupted. So what? We just sit here while she continues her crimes? No, Sarah said sharply. We confront her. Face to face. If we can get her to admit even a fraction, it will give us leverage. The thought of facing Amy, of seeing the reality of her monstrous nature up close, made my stomach churn. But Sarah's plan was sound. We needed a confession to solidify our case. Our search led us to a nightclub downtown, a place Amy frequented, where the music was loud, the lights dim, and the patrons too distracted to notice anything amiss. It was a perfect stage for her to blend in. She was at the bar, laughing with a crowd of wealthy admirers. When she turned and saw me, her smile faltered, just enough for me to see the fleeting panic in her eyes. Will, she said smoothly, masking her surprise with a practiced ease. What a coincidence. I stepped closer, my voice cold. We need to talk, Amy. She raised an eyebrow, a smirk curling her lips. Talk? After all this time? I thought we were finished. Not even close, I said, my voice resolute. You've been deceiving me for years. But it ends now. We know everything. Amy's eyes darted to Sarah, and for a split second, fear crossed her face before she regained her composure. Everything? She asked, feigning innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah stepped forward, holding out the documents. We have evidence of trafficking, money laundering, offshore accounts. It's all here. The fear returned to Amy's face, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, calculating glare. You think you can intimidate me with this? You're just pawns in a game you don't understand. I moved closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. Maybe. But this game is over. You can't escape the truth anymore. Amy's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw the real Amy, a cornered predator, ready to fight for her freedom. We'll see about that, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom, before she vanished into the crowd. Watching her disappear, my heart raced with a mix of fear and adrenaline. The confrontation had only begun, but one thing was certain, Amy's time was running out. The truth was closing in, and she could no longer hide. The aftermath of the nightclub confrontation left a sharp sting in my soul. Amy's brazen arrogance, her refusal to come clean, only solidified my determination. For years, she had hidden behind her beauty and deception, but now, we had her cornered. Yet, beneath the anger simmered a dark, unsettling premonition. Amy wasn't finished. A week passed in silence, but my instincts warned me of impending danger. Sarah and I continued our relentless pursuit of evidence, preparing to present our case to the authorities. Then, late one evening, the phone rang. It was Amy. My pulse quickened as I stared at the screen. Sarah's eyes locked onto mine, her face taut with concern. "Are you going to answer it?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded, pressing the phone to my ear. "What do you want, Amy?" Her voice was chillingly composed. "We need to talk, Will. One last time. No games, no tricks. I'll tell you everything." An uneasy knot tightened in my stomach. This was the moment I'd awaited, but her sudden change of heart was disconcerting. "Why now?" I asked, my voice edged with suspicion. "You wanted the truth, didn't you? Meet me at our old house in an hour. Come alone." I exchanged a glance with Sarah, who was watching me intently. "You think I'm going to fall for that?" I replied, gripping the phone tightly. "After everything you've done?" Her voice turned steely. "If you want answers, Will, this is your chance. Otherwise, walk away and spend your life in doubt. It's your choice." She hung up. The drive to the house was suffocating. I hadn't been there since before my arrest, before my life unraveled. The once beautiful home stood as a monument to my lost dreams. Memories of dinners by the fireplace and late nights on the porch felt like ghosts haunting me now. As I pulled up, the weight of the past pressed heavily on my shoulders. The house was dim, except for a solitary light glowing from the living room window. Amy was waiting. Steeling myself, I stepped out of the car. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore, it was about confronting the truth and finding closure. I needed to see Amy for who she really was, to hear the truth from her own lips. I walked up the steps and pushed open the front door. Amy stood in the middle of the room, her back to me. Though still beautiful and composed, she was different. Her shoulders were tense, her posture rigid. She turned slowly, her expression cold yet oddly vulnerable. "Will," she said softly, her usual charm absent. I closed the door behind me and kept my distance. "You said you'd tell me everything. So, talk." She hesitated, her eyes falling to the floor. For the first time, she seemed fragile. "I never intended for things to spiral this far," she whispered. "When we met, I was lost. You were my escape." I clenched my jaw, anger surging. "And that justifies using me? Manipulating me? You destroyed my life, Amy." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up. "I never wanted to hurt you. But things got out of control. I got involved with dangerous people. Initially, it was about money, but it spiraled. I couldn't stop it." "Stop lying," I snapped, stepping closer. "You had choices. You always had a choice. And you chose yourself every time." Amy's tears flowed freely. "I didn't know how to get out. They threatened me. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill me." I scoffed, shaking my head. "Don't play the victim now, Amy. You've been deceiving me from the start. You faked a pregnancy, sent me to prison. You let me suffer while you lived freely. I was scared," she cried, her voice breaking. "I thought if you knew the truth, you'd leave me. I couldn't face that." My heart hardened. "So, betrayal is your excuse?" Amy wiped her tears, trembling. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But there's more at stake than just us. If you expose everything, they'll come after you too. These people don't care about justice. They'll eliminate anyone who gets in their way." I took a step back, absorbing her words. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice a whisper. She hesitated, glancing nervously. "Patrick Hale. He's not just a businessman. He's the mastermind, trafficking, money laundering, everything. He's dangerous, Will. And if he finds out you're involved. I shook my head, resolute. I'm not afraid of him. He needs to be stopped. Amy's face crumpled. You don't understand. He's watching us right now. He knows we're here. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed behind me. I turned just in time to see two men emerge from the shadows. My heart raced as the cold realization of betrayal crashed over me. Amy had set me up. One man seized my arm with a vice-like grip, while the other stood by Amy, his hand resting on her shoulder. I struggled, but it was futile. They were too strong. You thought you could walk away from this, Will? The man growled. You've been a loose end for too long. Amy's eyes met mine, a flicker of regret visible. But it was too late. She had made her choice. You lied to me, I whispered, betrayal heavy in my voice. I had no choice, Amy replied hollowly. They made me. The man tightened his grip, dragging me toward the door. Let's go. You're coming with us. I glanced back at Amy one last time, my heart breaking anew. This is how it ends? She didn't answer, her eyes a mixture of guilt and fear. As they pulled me out, I knew that whatever love I had left for her had died in that room. The car ride was a blur of lights and shadows. They took me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, its air thick with decay. I was thrown to the floor, my head spinning from the impact. As I struggled to regain my bearings, the door creaked open, and Patrick Hale stepped in. Hale, tall and imposing, surveyed me with a cold smile. So, you're the one causing all this trouble, he said smoothly. I must admit, I'm impressed. Most don't get this far. I glared up at him, defiance burning bright. You're going to pay for what you've done. Hale chuckled, shaking his head. You don't understand, Will. You're not in control here. You're merely a pawn in a game far beyond your grasp. I spat at his feet, my defiance unwavering. I'm not afraid of you. He raised an amused eyebrow. You should be. Just then, the door burst open again. Sarah. She had tracked me down. Before Hale could react, she brandished a gun, aiming it with unshakable resolve. Let him go, she demanded, her voice steely. Hale's smile faltered as he glanced between Sarah and me. I see you've brought friends. How charming. Sarah's gaze remained steady. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to end this. Hale's expression darkened. For the first time, I saw genuine fear. He nodded to the men holding me, who slowly released their grip. I stumbled to my feet, heart pounding as Sarah kept the gun trained on Hale. It's over, I said hoarsely but firmly. Hale glared, his jaw clenched. You think this ends with me? You're wrong. This is just the beginning. Sarah smirked, her finger poised on the trigger. Maybe. But you won't be around to see it. With that, she fired. The shot echoed through the warehouse, and Hale crumpled to the ground, his lifeless body sprawled. As we walked out into the cold night, the chill on my face felt like freedom. Amy's betrayal had cut deep, but in the end, I had survived. Sarah glanced at me, her eyes softening. Are you okay? I nodded, though the weight of everything still pressed heavily on my chest. I will be. We left the past behind that night, stepping into an uncertain future. But as long as we faced it together, I knew we'd be all right. Amy, wherever she was, would have to live with her choices. As for me, I was done with the lies, the betrayal, and the darkness. I was ready for a new beginning. If you like this story, please subscribe, like, click the bell, and leave a comment. Thank you in advance.